Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Warriors in Business podcast. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune in to another episode. We've got an awesome guest today, and we are very excited to speak with him and pick his brain for everyone to enjoy. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you to all of our listeners for listening in to this podcast and for sharing it with your friends and family. We are on a mission to bring real value to military, veteran, and first responder businesses. And so we hope this podcast has been a great resource for you so far. We look forward to more interviews and talking to veteran business owners, first responder business owners, and other subject matter experts that you can hear directly from, hearing from your fellow peers, learning various methods, techniques, business strategies, and so much more for applying to your own businesses and for your own lives. So joining us today is Daniel Grochowski. Daniel is a military veteran, having served in the United States Army. He is the founder and CEO of Five and Fly, which is a career coaching company that helps active duty Army officers seamlessly and successfully transition to civilian life. He is also the host of a podcast called It'll Buff, which is a military transition podcast. I also want to say it's really cool to talk to another podcaster. I haven't had a chance to do that on our own podcast yet, so this is the first one. And so we're really excited to talk to Daniel today. So without further ado, Daniel, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, guys. Hey, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This is just it's an honor to be able to be involved in what you guys are doing with the Warriors in Business. I think that, especially as being a veteran who has made that transition to not only into the civilian world, but then taking on entrepreneurship lifestyle and the podcast lifestyle, if you will. It's just an honor to be on here and talk about this. I'm excited for this conversation, guys. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, definitely. And I also have my co-host, Todd, who's joining us today. Todd, how you doing?
Doing fantastic, and I'm looking forward to this podcast, Daniel. We really are excited to talk with you. It sounds like we've got some interesting angles and some impactful angles. Number one, you being a entrepreneur yourself, and number two, the content or the things that you actually do, in your business, helping individuals like yourself, transition from that, military life into civilian life, which is, I can't speak personally to it, but I just know that it's such an important thing for individuals around the country and dealing with it every day. So, number one, thanks for what you do for that content and helping other individuals for military veterans. And again, I look forward to learning from you and hearing about your story and hoping that resonates with our audience. So, again, thanks for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd.
Yes, it should be a great one. And Daniel, before we dive in, we first want to acknowledge and thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for the sacrifice you've made for our country to keep our community safe and free. It's an honor and a privilege to speak with you today.
Yeah, thanks, guys. One of those things that growing up as a kid, right, we all played, Army soldier in the backyard, and the fact that I was able to take the route that I did, serve this country, it was a great honor and privilege, and I'm excited to continue that service, but on the other side of the house. So thanks, guys.
Yes,
Awesome.
sir. Absolutely. Well, let's start on that note. Daniel, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And you said you played Army soldier in your backyard growing up. How did that eventually lead into you enlisting in the service?
Yeah, so funny story. So just quick thing about myself. First and foremost, I'm a follower of Christ, right? So I'm a Christian. I go to the Austin Stone, and I fully commit to that. Thanks for allowing me to share that. I'm a husband.
Sir.
To my wonderful wife, Kate Grochowski, as the story unfolds, right? I tricked her when I was in high school. I ended up playing football at West Point, and she's being a kicker, I definitely outkicked my coverage with my wife, and I'm a father of two little ones. I have Trace and Everly at home, and man, they're crazy, but I wouldn't trade the world for those little ones. And
that's wonderful.
Football was not that hard compared to raising children, correct?
Not even close.
Not even close.
Not even close. And I'm lucky. We're playing man coverage right now, which is great. And everybody's like, "Are you gonna have a third one?" And I was like, "I don't know. Zone coverage and me, I wasn't athletic enough for all that. So we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there." But so I think diving into really just the story of my service. I kind of hinted at it. So I played football in high school. As a kicker, I was blessed and honored to have the opportunity to represent my family and play football at the United States Military Academy at West Point. I wasn't a direct admit. I went to the prep school, so kind of enlisted there and was an enlisted soldier. It's a weird background. Played football there. Had an opportunity to kind of go, still go elsewhere if I wanted to, but really one of the things that I committed to was just the brotherhood mission in the military and this idea of being an officer on the other side. I think, they instill that from you day one. I'm reminiscing going back on Instagram. West Point's always posting, reception day, and you see the cadet candidates out there holding the knowledge in front of their face and memorizing it of all the stuff that's come before them and internalizing it. And, that was it. And for me, there was really nobody in my family that had a strong military background that was also present in my life. I had a few uncles. Like one uncle was a Navy enlisted, seaman, and I had another uncle who went to VMI. But nothing really present. And I think, to that point, I always played Army in the backyard. I always kind of had this idea of going in the Army. And I remember when I was in high school, I just was one of those kids where school wasn't it for me. And again, fortunate enough to get a scholarship, but I was like, I'm going to go do special forces or whatever. I was going to go really do all the cool guy stuff. Not especially be on this side, but got into West Point. And really, football was obviously the vehicle that got me to West Point, but really kind of started to fall in love with the Army and what it had to offer and the opportunities that it presented. I mean, at the end of the day, you basically are taught and then become in charge of the soldiers, these young men and women that other fathers and mothers trust their lives in your hands. And you get to develop them. And I think, to me, that was the greatest thing that, really kind of persuaded me to go into the military, was this idea of I get to having the background that I have and being a servant leader, of really instilling in kind of this next generation of soldiers and of officers coming behind me, and just really developing them, and then turning around and then having them be servant leaders, and really kind of being that servant leader, right? And just kind of having them ask the questions of like, hey, what makes you different? Hopefully that was a good different, but what makes you different? And and I really just enjoyed the opportunity at the end of the day. And so that's really kind of what got me into the military, was this idea that I just get to continue to pour back in to those loved ones, and really just be a light amongst some of the darkness that is kind of floats around out there for active duty service members and first responders.
Well, then I wonder, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that and being transparent. And I love hearing all of that. It sounds like maybe because of your background and your beliefs, and is that, part of what kind of drove you, or drives you, I should say, to really help, your fellow veterans or, military transitioning in, you want to help them transition in, because I'm assuming you see all of the challenges and potential problems and downfalls of that journey, if you will. Is that a fair statement, or am I just, reaching here?
No, you hit the nail on the head. I think, being in the military, I think you don't necessarily get to express, kind of like I guess I would say your Christian backgrounds, right? You have the ability to do that, but you have to do it in a subtle nature, right? And okay. I think they're you're right. Like you can call me a nerd if you will, but while we were deployed, I had brought Wayne Grudem's Systematic Theology and sat it on my desk, and people were like,
"Oh, that's awesome." And that's not a small book either. For anybody listening, that is a massive textbook. I have it on my shelf as well, and it takes up a majority of that shelf.
and it was one of those things where nobody knew what it was, right? Nobody, but what they would say is, "Sir, what the heck is that book on your table?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, let me tell you about it." And it just, again, that was the vehicle that allowed me to kind of have this conversation and share kind of what I was all about. But in realizing that, it's one of those things where it becomes harder and harder, right? As you take on higher and higher commands, you really have to kind of be reserved and close to the chest on what you are talking about and displaying to soldiers. Now, my faith is definitely one of the reasons why I ended up leaving the military, because we got into a community here in Georgetown. As I mentioned, I go to the Austin Stone, and I didn't want to leave it. These people were more important to me than I would say my family back home in Florida. I mean, these guys, they walked with me through a deployment. They were there to walk with my wife while she was home alone for almost 11 months. And I mean, and I could call on these people and talk with them about the hardest things, and they would lift me up. And really, that was the driving factor. If I thought to myself, hey, eventually I'm going to have to lead these people, and I didn't necessarily want to do that. And then, so, Todd, getting really kind of the long way to your question, what I realized is that a lot of veterans and active duty service members, right? They don't necessarily they get so focused on kind of the materialistic idea of the Army and what it offers, and they get trapped by it. And so, really having that background of mine, I was like, man, there's definitely. I'm not saying that the Army's a bad way. The Army is a great life, and you can if you maximize what it offers, you can really capitalize on a lot of awesome things. But for me, and what I was realizing is like, I think there's a different path to go down, and I really wanted to break away from that. And kind of be that pathfinder, if you will, that says, okay, I'm gonna trudge this path. I'm gonna be that servant leader. I'm gonna go suffer. I'm gonna go. Not saying it was all suffering, right? There was a lot of fun along the way, but
sure.
I'm gonna go walk down that path. I'm gonna kind of pave it, and I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna reach back to those gentlemen and say, hey guys, come on, like I'll help you. I'm here for you, and there is a better way if you're kind of struggling through some of this.
Yeah. It sounds so. You trailblazed your own path in a sense, but not just for the sake of self, but because you wanted to reach a hand back and help others in carrying them forward. Especially from what you were saying, if they can get kind of into this mindset when they're in the Army, just on the materialistic side of things, and to help them see that there's much more than that. Would you say that's a fair kind of recap of that?
100%, right? I think there's a lot of cool stuff in the Army, right? Like Jordan and Todd, you guys can't say you shot thousands of artillery rounds downrange and rockets and all that good stuff, or
not at all.
But you're right.
Sounds fun to me though.
Oh, it's a blast. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but that's 20% of the time. But that's exactly it, Jordan. It really is one of those things where it's like, hey, I think what happens is a lot of people say that the transition out of the military is easy, and I'm not saying that those people are wrong, but I'm just gonna say that that's not right. I think that at the end of the day, it is really hard, and I think that there's just a lot of things that you aren't prepared for. And I was kind of willing to be one of those guys following in my faith system and being like, hey, I trust wholeheartedly in God and where He's calling me to go, and I'm going to go follow Him, and He's going to help me out, and I'm going to stumble, and I'm just going to be ready to turn around and help those people that are coming behind me and stumbling.
Yeah, that's awesome. In talking about that transition time, helping these individuals, and you have this calling and want to help these individuals, and they're at this critical watershed moment in their life. They're coming back, transitioning out of military life into civilian life, and then they have some very important decisions to make. And I can't even imagine all the decisions and all of the the stress that goes along with that. But one of those decisions is what are they going to do? Do they go back to school? Do they go get employed? Do they make the transition and make the leap to become an entrepreneur? All of these really major life decisions, because at the end of the day, they financially they have to, or they will, most of them will want to and have to do something to support them and or their family. So these are really major things. What, Daniel, are some of the things that you number one, have you seen are the biggest top one or two challenges related to that, and what advice do you see regularly and commonly having to give to these individuals when it comes to these major life decisions through this transition time?
Yeah, that's a great question, Todd, and it's one that I'm still trying to solve as I talk to more and more service members who are transitioning out. But I think really kind of the toughest barrier to entry is really being able to explain to your future employer how critical the skills that you developed as a leader in the military are to helping shape their organization. I think. I mean, I would say that really is, and that was something that I found, and I think, and that's why and we'll dive into it, but that's really it. That's the hardest thing to do, because I still, unfortunately, and as I'm trying to educate businesses on this front, unfortunately, I feel that a lot of organizations still view veterans as these PTSD, crazy gunslinging, individuals.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of, and I'm not saying that like painting a bad light on organizations, but I still think there is that fear that if I bring this individual on, it's going to be an HR nightmare. And
Never thought about that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but it's a good point.
Yeah. And, also too, right, it's this idea of like, oh, sure, has all this leadership under stress, but, he didn't necessarily, he doesn't have 5 years of, for example, when I was getting in the military, I was looking to go into project management for a startup company. And, the reservation there is, well, do you have the certifications? Have you had the time in there? And it's like, trying to relate, like, I deployed, 1,000 plus people over, a big body of water into another continent, and we got all our stuff there, hundreds of millions of dollars, and then turn around and send it back. I think I'm capable of project management.
Right.
I think I know what I'm doing.
But it's just so it's just really kind of like translating that. And I think really, and to answer the second part of your question, Todd, of, what type of advice, and this is something that I unfortunately kind of figured out after the fact for my transition. And this is where I tell every single individual who is looking to transition, whether you're a first responder or active duty service member, looking to transition into the civilian world, no matter what you want to do. Simon Sinek wrote a book, Start With Why, and I kind of translated that. I said, start with why. Start with, why do you even want to get out of the military? Or why do you want to no longer be a first responder, right? And what I tell them is that why cannot be for material reasons, right? It can't be for a salary. It can't be for a job. It can't be for a location, because those things are fleeting. They come and go. And as I found out, and as other people come and, find out, it's like, oh, I thought working for Tesla was going to be this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, I'm actually not really enjoying my time here, or whatever, right? I don't want to, get into names, but really starting with why, and creating sitting down and coming up with values. What do you stand for, right? That's, I think, the most important thing, because it helps you relate to people that you're eventually going to go network and work for, but it also helps you stand on, okay, when you're looking at organizations, what are their values? If your values and their values don't align, it's not going to be a good time. It's not going to be a good fit for you. And then lastly, coming up with that mission statement and that vision statement, right? What is your Everest? When you get up there, what do you see? Where do you see yourself doing, right? And really, that's where I tell people to start, because once you have that, everything else kind of, and at least as I've come to recognize, really starts to fall in place, because you start to realize, oh, it's more than just getting a job, right? It's finding a career. It's finding a lifestyle outside of the military. And really, as I educate people or those first responders, it's your opportunity to really kind of, in a way, restart. And the cool thing about the civilian world is, it's not vertical. It's not, you can go left, right, middle, backwards, forwards, right? And again, if it aligns with your vision and your values, it doesn't matter.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's awesome advice, especially for those that are in that process, or thinking of wanting to transition from active duty military or first responder to civilian life. So, Daniel, I want to transition just a little bit and ask you. So, I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast your company, Five and Fly, being a career coaching company, and in some of our pregame talk, you were talking about two different paths, as it were, two areas of focus that you guys are engaging in, one on the individual side and the other applicable to businesses, or B2B. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that, so that people have an idea of what you're working on with Five and Fly, how you're helping active duty officers transition to civilian life, but also working with the businesses as well, which you've seen as a need in today's marketplace.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. So really on the individual side, really trying to get with active duty service members, officers of any military branch, getting them at a certain time point, right? I would say whether you're transitioning from being a first responder or active duty service member, you need time. I mean, time is your friend. And I've come to find out that really the sweet spot is kind of like that 18 to 24 month mark. It gives you 2 years to kind of start networking, developing that resume, really exploring organizations and where you would fit in that organization, and how, if you would actually be a culture fit, if you will. And so on the individual side, really working with those individuals and pointing them in the right direction. One of the things that I struggled with when I was getting out of the military was the idea of paralysis by analysis. unfortunately, I guess it's a fortunate, unfortunate thing of there's so many resources and so much information out there that you just kind of look at it and, you start to use a hammer to nail in a screw, right? You're like, oh yeah, this is like, right, they told me to do this hammer and this, and so it's kind of one of those things where you're like, you're just using the wrong tool for the wrong thing.
Right.
And so really on the individual side, the B2C side of the house is helping coach them along the way of, hey, here are what I would like to call knowledge packets, right? Like it's a clear set path of, okay, here's how you start networking. Here's how you start building a resume. Here's how you figure out why you want to get out of the military. And developing them through that so that when it comes time to get these what I call, decision points or milestones, if you will, they have, okay, I've done the background. I have 3 different courses of actions I can take, right? If here's the course of action number 1, if that fails, I have a backup, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And so really just working with them on just that big picture so that they're not coming into making decisions scared. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. We'll just go to decision 2, decision 3. We got it. And then, again, kind of referring back to Todd, kind of interlinking the business to business side and what Todd was asking about of like really, the hardest thing is that barrier to entry to companies, right? And so on the B2B side of the house, I'm talking with a few companies right now and, educating them on this opportunity called a skill bridge, right? The Army specifically allocates like a legit set resource path, right? Commanders need to be able to provide Army officers with this opportunity. This is 180 days, 6 months out, right? So in the last 6 months, you have 6 months to where the Army says, hey, we're going to pay you at the rank at which you're at, and you can go intern for a company and either earn a spot at that company or develop the skills that's going to allow you to transfer to another company and land a job there. And educating companies like, hey, you have 6 months to mold an individual where you don't pay them. You could save $30,000, right? And I'm like, I don't care who you are, what business you are. If you can save $30,000, I know people's ears are going to perk up right away.
Oh, that's definitely true.
And so, especially in today's economy too. And, it's like, really kind of, really allowing those and forming those businesses of, hey, here's this amazing resource of a active duty service member who will be a veteran when he or she will be a veteran when they work for you. Here is a free 6 months to develop them. And right here, and then here's this program that I can help you create so that you can continuing to bring these individuals on board. Because at the end of the day, what happens is people end up coming, companies don't have a veteran. They bring a veteran on board and they're like, holy smokes, we need more of these people. And it always happens every time. And so that's really just trying to get ahead of that so companies know, oh yeah, we want more of those people even though we don't have any.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to go back to something you said that really hit home for me because I've said this for pretty much my entire adult life. And you said, no, I'm paraphrasing, but knowing your why, right? For individuals, you have to think about, and I have personally dealt with tens of thousands of entrepreneurs over, 30 plus year professional career span in different ways. And, I think something that is when a lot of people have talked to me about entrepreneurship over the years, or I've talked to the entrepreneurs who went through that process to become an entrepreneur, and some that have left entrepreneurship to go back into, a W-2 type of employment. Mm-hmm. And, it sounds like your approach, which I really think is key and crucial and so overlooked, is really getting someone to understand their why. And what that means is, what do you really want? For example, if Jane or John Doe, if you asked them that question and they said, I absolutely need stability and security. Well, entrepreneurship may not be right for them, right? It's not a good fit. And so to try to push them into the entrepreneurship is like square peg, round hole. Somebody else may say, I enjoy my time, my family, I like to travel, whatever that lifestyle is. Flexibility of time, entrepreneurship does tend to offer that more than a W-2 job, unless you're okay with just having 1 or 2 weeks off. Income, right? Entrepreneurship, in my personal opinion, has that ability to not cap it, right? So the short term is hard, okay, but the long term can, if you stick with it, can can provide that in leaps and bounds more than any type of W-2 job. Again, my personal opinion. So those are those kind of things. So I'm saying all that to say it sounds like you're really honing in on that approach of trying to consult with people and really, look in that introspective and say, what do you really want? What's important to you and your family, your spouse, your kids, all of those kind of things. So all that to say, how do people go through, or how are you helping, or what advice would you give? And I know this is a tough question because it's so broad, but if someone came to you and you only had a couple of minutes on an elevator, and all of a sudden they just turned around and said, "Oh, you're that guy who does this, Daniel. I know you." So, and what would you tell them on how they would go through that fundamental life decision when it comes to their professional life on, do I go the entrepreneurship route or do I go the W-2 route?
Well, a small plug to my podcast, but I'll tell them it'll buff up front. Bottom line up front, it'll buff out. It always
plugs
does.
are allowed on this podcast. Go for
That's
it.
right. That's right.
Please do.
And it really, at the end of the day, it'll buff. I think, I elevator pitch. At the end of the day, whether you're an individual who's in a W-2 world or you want to be an entrepreneur, I would say no matter what market you're in, it's volatile. We look at the economy where we're at today. People are getting laid off at Deloitte. People are getting laid off at Google. People are getting laid off. You name a company, they're getting laid off. And so you sit here and tell me, right, at the end of the day, it's, I want stability in this, that, and the other thing. It's like, well, look around. I would argue there really isn't much stability anywhere. And so, you can knock that off the check, right? Honestly,
totally
the
agree.
stability is turn around and go join the army, go back in the army. Or go back and be a first responder. That's where your stability is going to be.
Yeah, very good point.
And then you tell them, you say, hey, going back to exactly what is your why, right? And recognizing and I'm finding out this the hard way with entrepreneurship. It's hard. It is really hard. I've caught myself. I've been doing this for, really kind of like you guys. I kind of really started hardcore in March. And there have been times where I've had friends who I'm working with recruiters to try and transmove in, but it's like, hey man, you got a job, and I'm like, no, I don't need to do that, right? I'm on the path, but it's hard. It's really hard. And really, really sitting there and when I tell people to start with their why, I would say the second thing to do, and really kind of the last part of elevator pitch, is make sure you have a strong team that's going to sit there and tell you and look you in the eyes and say, hey, that's a really dumb idea, or hey, that's a really good idea. And
yes.
and that really has been, and that's my community to a T. I sat down and I talked to them. I said, hey guys, and I talked to my wife. I said, hey, I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna go be an entrepreneur. And every single one of them are like, we're here for you. We think you should do that. And we're here to support you. And so really, not only once you figure out that why is look around. Stability is not everywhere for you, but really, really cultivating that strong community that's going to look you in the eyes and say, hey, that's a really good idea, or that's a really dumb idea. Because at the end of the day, you'll know real quick whether or not you want to be an entrepreneur. It takes that drive. It takes that gut feeling, that tenacity to want to continue to go get after it and win. And really, that's what I'm finding out now. You just every day. But I love it. I woke up this morning and I said, I'm excited to do what I'm doing. And so really that's kind of the answer to the question.
Yeah, we've talked to a few individuals about their journey from military to civilian life and then making the choice to become an entrepreneur. And it's one of the things that they have consistently pointed out is, and you were referencing it, with stability in the military, and then when they transition out of the military or from as a first responder to civilian life, that there's no guidebook, there's no stability structure, anything that says, here's what you do, here's how you do it, here's when you do it, here's what happens when you don't do it. And they're like, wait, what do I do now? Like they have to create that for themselves. And so it's something that has been a kind of consistent theme and pattern that we've seen. And I think part of that is also the journey of an entrepreneur for anybody, because when you're a part of something, a company, or an organization, corporation, or even a part of the military, like there are structures in place. There's expectations, there's hierarchies, there's, what's going to happen when, typically, you do. Yeah. And then you adjust as you go. But then when you venture out on your own, there's nothing. Like it's just open pasture. And you have to start from the ground up to build it up for yourself, and then obviously, grow it from there once you have the structures in place. And I think one of the ways that not only from people we've talked to, but even just what you were mentioning is the people around you, the community that you have around you that you can talk to, that can, you can bounce ideas off of, and then they can speak into your life as well, saying, "Oh, it's a great idea," or like, "Nope, that's terrible. Don't do that." That type of thing.
Yep.
I wrote it down in my notes earlier of like community being such a critical component for being able to transition, from military to civilian life, for whether you want to be a W-2 employee or for becoming an entrepreneur yourself. And so it sounds like your team, your community that you have around you has been instrumental for, at least for your journey anyway.
They're absolutely critical. I mean, they're critical to life. And, I think I would say one of the other things when I was deciding to leave the military, I talked with, again, back in that corner, not really knowing what I want to do, talked to recruiting firms or whatever. And they said, hey, would you be willing to leave Austin? I said, absolutely not. And they said, okay, well, we're not going to work with you. And I said, that's fine. That's fine. My community's got my back. But they're critical. They're instrumental to my life. And I have some of the best friends. Just kind of like life accountability people who I can sit there and have really hard conversations with. And that to me, and again, this is me, right? This is Daniel Grochowski. This is what important to me. That just having, because, at the end of the day, the success, the glory, the triumphs, the downturns, right? It's all going to come and go. And I think, the sooner you realize that, and the sooner you realize that the people that go along the way with you are more important than any of that stuff, that's really kind of the key to unlocking your ability to really figure out what, this path isn't easy. And again, I'm not going to say it, but it makes it easier when you have that support system, knowing, right? Like I can go ask them a question. They're going to point me in the right direction. Or if I fail, they're going to be there to pick me up. Or if I succeed, they're going to be there. I think this is the other side of the hat that a lot of people don't talk about, right? And I think Todd was kind of coming to it, right? But it's this idea of when you succeed, right? When you succeed and you make the 7-figure, 8-figure business, right? You did it, right? You're the entrepreneur. You sell your company, right? Now you have all this money, and how do you align it? Those people are also there to help hold you accountable to that and say, hey man, remember what your vision, what your values, and what your mission was when you started this journey, and make sure that you stay accountable to that. So yeah, to your point, my community is everything to me.
Yeah, and I think I'll add on to that. I've said this in probably multiple podcasts, and I've said it for decades, and it's a term that I've used called paths of opportunity revealed. And what I mean by that is that whether it's in our personal life or in particular for this podcast, in our business life, professional careers, you always have to be moving forward, and you always have to essentially be networking and being proactive, not reactive. Mm-hmm. And that can be, for example, whether that's having, conversations, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's phone calls, whether it's emails, whether it's with people that but you're always talking with people, and it's okay to let them know, hey, reaching out to somebody, whether it's LinkedIn, email, phone call, whatever it may be. And it's not necessarily, you don't have to always be selling everyone, but you always need to be connecting with people, engaging with people, and asking questions or letting them know, hey, I'm just. It's kind of like, I think if I'm not mistaken, like Jordan reached out to people on LinkedIn. I think that's how the two of you connected, which was, hey, we're just networking with other, podcasters, military veterans, things like this, always, constantly. Yeah. You never know what that opportunity presents itself, and someone responds and it starts a conversation. And I could do a whole probably 3-day series on sales through indirect selling and paths of opportunity revealed. I love that stuff, but it's something you have to be consistent at. And it's almost like I could gauge that out with however much activity you do proactively, it's going to net result in almost this mathematical equation. And when you stop that progress moving forward, everything will just stop behind it too. It's like when a boat stops in the water, the wake stops. It's the same thing in our personal and particularly in our professional careers. So you always have to be going forward. Pardon me. And so I'm saying that it sounds like I think that's good advice for all of us to remember. For everyone listening on this, you always have to be moving forward, and you never know where the next Daniel or the next Jordan or the next Jane Smith comes from, and she knows somebody, and that creates this opportunity. Whether that's a job, whether that's a large account, whether that's just whether it's publicity that you get, you just never know. But if you stop it, then all of that stuff will stop. You have to move forward, and it's amazing that when you do that, and all of a sudden these opportunities present themselves, which is why I say paths of opportunity reveal. Is that something that you have experienced? Do you agree with that? And, do you see that in your own professional career, and or would you advise other, military veterans, transitioning, or maybe they've already transitioned, into an entrepreneurship role, something similar to that?
Man, Todd, I couldn't agree more with you. And it is my favorite way, to really sell anything. Never in my life did I think I was gonna be a salesman, and I remember when I was getting out of the military, I was like anything but being a sales guy, and here I am trying to be an entrepreneur, right? Like,
right.
When at the end of the day, like, being a sales guy is what you are, right? You gotta convince people that, hey, this minimum viable product that I have is the one. But it's at the end of the day that if I could tell that, I would say probably, outside of figuring out, starting with your why are you doing this? Never turning down an opportunity to network. Never.
Yeah.
Get it. There's like bots out there on LinkedIn and email, all that stuff. But when you make an authentic connection, right? When Jordan reached out to me on LinkedIn, I said, absolutely, I don't even care what time it takes, because, this is another opportunity to talk to Jordan, right? And then, it's one of those things where you just never know when you say yes to somebody what's going to happen. And I ended up, playing golf with a guy, and I was just like, sure, yeah, whatever, I'll play with the golf. And, next thing you know, I find out he's, the CEO of some small, medium business. And he's like, hey man, well, if Five of Fly doesn't work out, or It'll Buff Podcast doesn't work out, let me know. And we could bring you on board. I love what you're doing. I love your mindset. And
nice.
It's just one of those things where it's you just keep go. It's momentum builds momentum. And
right.
I think at the end of the day, it's having that outlook too, right? It's kind of like, I'm not one of those like crazy, mind guys, but I really do think it's the idea of like a positive mind creates positive results. And I think when you start reflecting on, hey, like, I'm going to go talk to this person, this is like a weird background conversation, but there's a show on Netflix called Unstable. It's like kind of one of those weird shows. We just stumbled upon it, whatever. And the CEO of the company lost his wife. He's starting to go crazy. But what he tells his son is, he says, hey, when you're going on this first date, just have the I don't care mentality. Just go out there and do it, right? Just go forward, be better, do something hard, figure it out, fail, learn. And I kind of adopted that, I don't care mindset in my head. I do care, but to Todd's point, if you don't go out and try something, you're never going to know how hard it is. And that's why, another side is like, that's why I love lifting weights, right? A pound is a pound, right? You're never going to know how much 350 pounds is until you go out and lift 350 pounds, right? So you never know what it's going to be like to go talk to a CEO or a VP of a large company unless you go do it, unless you go sit down and do it, unless you go sit down and forge those relationships. That's it.
That's right.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
By the way, I curl 350, just for the record.
Hey, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. I love it.
Wait. I was dreaming. What just happened? I just woke up. One other thing I've got to say really fast, too, is I love it when entrepreneurs, and I've had so many, say this to me, and they would say, man, I want to become an entrepreneur, and I'm going to do that, but I got a heart, but I'm not a salesperson. And I just kind of like try not to laugh. I'm like, if you're an entrepreneur, whether you know it or not, you are your number one salesperson. You are the voice in the brand. But you can do sales without being salesy. And that's the thing that, one of these days I'm probably going to I would like to actually sit down and actually create some content for that, because there are so many different ways to sell, and sales has such a negative connotation because it's hard and there's a lot of negative perception out there, but you can actually sell in a lot of indirect, softer ways and get you can get way better results than the aggressive, stereotypical, used car salesman type thing. Anyway, that'll be fun. That's just kind of off topic. But you got to be your own salesperson. You have to drive your own brand. You have to love what you do. You have to be able to have that why and get up every morning, to your point, Daniel. So thanks for sharing all those things. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. If you're not passionate about what you're selling, nobody else can be passionate about it. So that's great. I love it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you passionately want to tell the people you can curl 350, which is, I'm pretty sure Todd took a Sharpie and just wrote 350 on the plate and then lifted it. So
I didn't say pounds, by the way. I didn't say pounds.
Oh man, wow! Now we're getting the technicals. I love it. That's awesome. No, that's great. That's great.
All good. Well, man, we've covered quite a bit today. This has been an awesome conversation, Daniel. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us and with our audience listening in. Now, here's your chance. We allow plugs on this podcast. So how can people get in touch with you? How can they reach out to Five and Fly, or even, more info on your podcast? Why don't you go ahead and share those things?
Yeah, so really there's kind of three ways to do that. So you can go to fiveandfly.com and you can scroll through the website, and there's multiple buttons that said book a free coaching call with me. I'd love to just sit down. It's 30-minute conversation. We sit down and talk about, hey, where are you at? What is your timeline? Where do you want to go? And we talk through that. Secondly, find me on LinkedIn, Daniel Grochowski, CEO, founder of Five and Fly. There's also the Five and Fly LLC company page that you can go follow. And I'm posting all kinds of information up there, just daily tidbits of just helpful pieces of knowledge for those service members that are looking to transition. And then lastly, the It'll Buff podcast, where we have conversations like this, where we talk about people, active duty service members' journeys in and out of the military. We've talked with masterminds of people who are civilians but work with veterans and active duty service members and help them transition more successfully. We talk with entrepreneurs, and so really those are kind of the I would say the four ways to reach out to me. I'm excited. I would love to talk to you, love to share what we're going on. And then lastly, we're having a community. We're building a community on Heartbeat. So that's going to be on the Five and Fly webpage coming soon, where you can go check out that community and be part of a community of like-minded individuals who are seeking to transition successfully. So thanks, Jordan and Todd, for letting me share that.
Awesome, of course. Absolutely. And for everything that Daniel just mentioned, we will include that information in the podcast description below. That way you can reach out to him directly and be a part of the community that he's building as well. So this has been an awesome conversation. For everyone listening, thank you once again for tuning in to the Warriors in Business podcast. Please subscribe to our channel and share the show with your friends and family and with your fellow military veterans and first responders, for those business owners that you could learn so much from this discussion here, from business insights to entrepreneurship to just personal challenges that we face to help overcome them. Our goal here is to bring real value to the military, veteran, and first responder business community. And so we hope that you've enjoyed every bit of this conversation here. As well, for the larger mission that we are on right now, please go to www.joinbravery.com. That's join, BRAVARI.com. Bravery is the online marketplace specifically dedicated to elevating and promoting military, veteran, and first responder businesses. So go to joinbravery.com to sign up for your free business listing. And so we'll have some more information on the development of Bravery here in the next few months. And so beyond that, everyone, thanks for tuning in. We hope you're well. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.
I can feel it deep in my bones, rising up and taking control, like a sickness running through my veins. It's a force that's pulling on the reins. My head won't drop, my feet won't